This recording will cover Chapter 14, the last chapter in your textbook, Mathematics Difficulties. For those of you who don't know me, I am a math person, which actually is quite a shock to people who knew me way back when. But I ended up becoming the math resource teacher when I used to teach in Charleston County. And after that is when I went back to get my doctorate, and I actually used a program, an intervention that I had used when I was a teacher in Charleston County. I used that intervention program. It's a math facts intervention. I used that to complete my dissertation to see if it was actually an effective program, which it was. And so it's interesting that I've become a math person. But as to not play favorites, to the other content areas that your textbook talks about, I'm not going to talk for hours about this chapter, even though I would like to do so, but I will keep it probably just to this one 15-minute segment. And then those of you who are new to the program, you will take Education 763 and 764 with me in the next few semesters. And those two courses are both all about math. Yay! Those of you who are further along in the program, you've obviously already taken those with me. So I'm not going to go too much in depth into this math chapter, just because you will get more as you go on in your program. All right, so here are your two truths and a lie. Again, you don't have to submit them, you don't have to do anything. Just see if you can figure out which one is a lie, and if you cannot, maybe go back to your textbook and look it up. Okay, so thinking about math, right? There's a lot involved with math, and I'm sure just by the title of this chapter, I guarantee you there are some of you saying, "Oh, math, no, please, don't make me." It's okay, I promise. Not everybody likes math, but you at least have to like it enough to get your students to like it, right? Or to convince them that you like it and it's the most important thing in the world. So you might have to kind of fake your excitement for math a little bit, which is fine, but just make sure that they can't tell that you're totally lying about the importance of math. Okay, so we want to think, when we're thinking about math, we want to think early on, what goes on first? What are some of those early number learning skills and concepts that our students, our younger students, need to learn? We need to think about things like spatial relations. Some of you are probably saying, "Oh, I am terrible with spatial relations." And I'm really good with packing like moving vans and moving trailers. I just helped my friend pack one last night, which is why I'm thinking about this. And I've moved so many times that I am kind of the queen of not wasting space. Otherwise, spatially, I'm not so good, right? So it's okay to not be strong in one area. But we want to give, especially those of you who are in the early childhood, we want to give your students opportunities to play with blocks, puzzles, models, over, under, right? Those spatial relations tasks. You want to have them recognize shapes, counting objects by touching them, that visual motor perception, and concepts of time and direction, estimating a minute, an hour. Time is hard, right? Because why? It's abstract. Yes, we can see it on a clock, but 10 minutes is, what do you compare 10 minutes to? It's very abstract. It's very difficult for our children, especially those who might struggle. They might have mathematics disabilities, or they might have mathematics difficulties. Your textbook goes into, kind of a lot more depth as to the differences between math difficulties and math disabilities, or, learning disabilities in math. But I went too far, sorry. Some of our students might have some information processing difficulties, just kind of taking in all that information. They might have language and reading problems. Think about how much language and vocabulary and reading is involved in math. I almost said how much math is involved in math. You're welcome. They might have a lack of mathematics learning strategies. I know in the past couple of chapters, we've talked about learning strategies for teaching reading, written expression, stuff like that. Students need those same strategies for math, especially our students who struggle, and have difficulties or disabilities. Math anxiety, right? I'm sure, again, some of you are probably saying, "Oh, that's me. Don't make me go to the board to do anything math related." Well, some of your students are going to feel the same way, and we're going to talk about that in just one second. So thinking about some information processing problems, they might have motor problems, the actual writing of the numbers or the numerals. Attention problems, well, maybe they lose interest because math is typically boring and it's typically just people lecturing and talking. No, no, no. We're going to talk about what to do other than just talking and lecturing to your students about math. Memory, right? They might not be able to remember those math facts, those basic math facts, which is, again, what I said, what my dissertation was about. They might struggle with remembering. I'm struggling with my words, apparently. They might struggle remembering those sequence. What do we do first in a math problem? What do we do next? They might lose their place on a worksheet. They might have a hard time, lining up the numbers. One easy solution for this is either A, let them use graph paper to write their numerals, and you might need to enlarge it a little, and tell them to put one numeral in each box, or take lined notebook paper and turn it, normally it goes kind of up and down, turn it sideways, right? So the lines then go, kind of from top to bottom, and let them use those lines on the paper as a way to align their numbers. They also might have some auditory processing issues, remembering those basic math facts, again, going back up here, and trouble counting on. There's, two main strategies. There's a lot of strategies, but two of the ones that your textbook talks about are counting all and counting on. We want our students to get to where they are counting on. So counting all would be, you have two groups of objects. You would start at 1 and say 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, go on to my next group. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. When you count on, they would look at, ideally, the larger group. They would be able to say, okay, that's 5. I know that I can just start at 5 and count on the other group. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's much more efficient to count on than to count all. So that is ultimately where we want our students to be. Okay, which term describes these area in math? Again, you don't have to submit them or anything. I'll give you a hint. One of the answers is one-to-one correspondence. Okay, so see if you can figure those two out. Okay, problems with language and reading. Again, yes, I know that we're talking about math. I hear you, but thinking about math vocabulary, right? You don't hear kids out on the playground saying, ooh, I'm a polygon, I'm gonna catch you, right? I think they should play math tag on the playground, make it happen, but not everybody does that. When we're talking about reading, we're always talking about vocabulary. Oh, where did you see that word? Oh, blah, blah, blah. Math, we don't do that. So we really need to spend a lot more time explicitly teaching math vocabulary. Oh, I keep going too fast, y'all, I'm sorry. Confusing math terms, difficulty in reading story problems. All of these things, difficulties with language and reading can contribute to difficulties with math. Okay, so also math anxiety. Some students, yes, they don't like to read aloud. They're nervous about that. But I think on the whole, there's a lot more students who are anxious about math and nervous about math, and especially kind of the way things used to be done, where, oh, I'm going to call on 3 students, go up to the board and do your math problems and show us how it's done. Which is fine, there's a place for that and everything, but you also want to be very careful with students who might have math anxiety, especially those with learning disabilities in math or math difficulties. They're probably going to be a lot more anxious about math. So thinking about all of these ways to help alleviate some of that anxiety. Okay, so I want you to think as you get out, and I know some of you are in classrooms, some of you are, in schools in various capacities. As you're going through this program, or as you're kind of getting ready to student teach, think about how you can make math active for your students. How can you involve them? How can they be actively engaged? This is kind of one area of research of mine that I'm interested in, is active learning and tools that we can use for active learning, especially in math. Okay, so you can have them construct their own solution, draw a picture of the math problem, explain how they found the solution. You really want students to come up with different ways to solve the same problem, right? I remember when I was teaching the early childhood math methods class, I remember this one example, and it was you have a 2-story structure out on the playground, kind of a playhouse or tree house, whatever you want to call it. You have 4 students. Draw a picture of one way that the students can play or something, whatever the words were. So think about just in that simple problem, 4 students, 2 floors, right? So you could have 4 students on the top floor, 0 on the bottom. You could have 4 students on the bottom floor, 0 on the top. You could have 2 and 2, 1 and 3, 3 and 1. So just with that simple problem, there are, 4 or 5 different solutions. You could have some kids outside of the house if that was part of the directions. But thinking about that and thinking about the conversation that could start just, again, with something that simple, thinking about how you can use stuff like that with your students. You also want to think about progressing from concrete to abstract, or CRA. And I added this representational. It was not in the PowerPoint that's posted. So I have always called it representational. So the CRA level is the concrete level, semi-concrete or representational, and abstract. Okay, your textbook calls it both. They have that representational in parentheses, and I'm trying to find, of course, the pages on. Oh, in the textbook, in the hard textbook, it's page 432. So concrete, you're going to use real objects, real manipulatives, real blocks, cubes, marbles, teddy bears, whatever you have. If you're an early childhood person, I'm sure your mind is turning as to what you have in your classroom and what you've used. Then you want the students to progress to the semi-concrete or the representational. So this is where they would use graphic symbols, tallies, pictures, something like that to represent the numbers. Then you would go to the abstract level where it's just numbers, right? So up here, 5 plus 3, you would give them 5 red cubes plus 3 blue cubes. Here they could draw little tally marks, or they could draw pictures of, of boxes or of circles, whatever. And here they would just have 5 plus 3 with nothing, no manipulatives, in front of them. You want to also start thinking about, part-whole relationships. You see this, as your students progress in math. How can you teach this? How can you kind of break things down and look at, okay, we have, this is really addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Thinking about the whole and the part and the part. Sometimes a problem gives you a part and a whole, and you have to find the other part, right? Sometimes it gives you 2 parts and you have to find the whole. So your textbook talks about that on page 447. Some other problems in the Gen Ed classroom for students with mathematics disabilities. Students may not have prior knowledge, right? They might have missed some of those early numeracy skills, one-to-one correspondence, quantity discrimination, right? Giving them 2 numbers, and asking which one is larger, which one is a greater quantity. So some of your students, those of you who teach the older students, you might want to go back and see, do they have those basic early numeracy skills? Counting quantity discrimination. Well, do they have counting? First of all, can they just count? Can they recognize, numeral identification? Can they tell the missing number? Can they tell, again, the quantities, stuff like that? It might not be a problem with whatever they're working on in 4th grade. You might need to back up a little bit. Some common math errors, place value. Oh, here they put the 1 down, but then they didn't do anything with the 10, right? They didn't regroup. Computation facts, just those basic facts, errors, not memorizing them. Typically teachers are like, okay, today we're going to work on the 4s in multiplication. Okay, tomorrow you're taking your test and we're moving on to the 5s, right? Regardless of if the students are ready or not. So thinking about that, sometimes they might just use the wrong process, right? Just a simple, hey, they used an addition. They thought that was an addition sign instead of the subtraction symbol. Working from left to right. Sometimes students like to work in math the same way that they read. Not how it really goes, right? Okay, so some learning strategies, instructions. Again, if you are new to the program, you will hear a lot more about this in 763 and 764. Provide elaborate explanations, model, right? So in math, you really want to think about how you can model. Watch me, I'm going to do it first. Okay, now we're going to do some together. Now you're going to do some, you, the students, are going to do some on your own. You want to engage in that teacher-student dialogue and ask processing questions. Okay, the Common Core State Standards has 8 standards for practice. So you want to look at those. I know the Common Core aren't necessarily used per se, but South Carolina standards for, college and career readiness also look at these same standards. Okay, and then, so we want to think about how to include students in Gen Ed using math manipulatives, teaching math vocabulary, explicitly teaching math vocabulary. visuals, graphics, and many opportunities for practice and review, and think about how you can make math come alive and be meaningful for your students. I really think this proverb is especially true in math, so think about how you can make math active and fun.